Hello all, and good evening. Welcome to our virtual cross-party and cross-faith Iftar event organized by us at the Dialogue Society. I'm Aisha Aaron, a research fellow and project coordinator with the Society. And I'd like to begin by really emphasizing that it's an absolute honor to be, to have been asked to host today by my Society. Of course, this kind of stems from being here with our members of parliament and our diverse, faith community leaders, coming together, united around the theme of rekindling our community spirit. Especially when we consider, the past 14 months have been difficult for us as a nation. I hope some of the discussions that come out from today can shine some light and inspiration for what our future holds. We have a very diverse lineup of speakers with us today, and art and music performers as well. And I'm sure many more are going to be engaging with YouTube. So, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who are here with us this evening. And I'd like to begin, by sharing some of our aims and work at the Dialogue Society and kind of briefly introducing us. And then hopefully I'll pass along the microphone and we'll have a chance to hear from all our very valuable speakers. I'll introduce each speaker just as they are offered the platform. And just before we start, I'd like to say that, we were going to be joined by Sarah Jones, the MP for Croydon and Central and the Shadow Minister for Policing and Fire Services. But unfortunately, she can't be with us today. So we'd just like to, pass that along to those who may be expecting to see her. And, hopefully we'll see her at an event in the future. So, the Dialogue Society, who are we? We're a UK-based charity, and we've been active since 1999, so for over 20 years. And our work is mainly shaped by our core aim, that is to advance social cohesion by connecting communities, empowering people to engage and also to contribute to the development of the ideas on dialogue and community building. As you can probably guess from the large scope of interest area that I've just described, we have to do this, through several different projects, which can bring people together, whether that be discussion forums, courses, publications, outreach, interfaith visits, cookery clubs, engaging in youth, in schools and in colleges, and, looking at a lot of issues that we have in our society from a critical dialogue lens, including, a bottom-up approach to discussing possible solutions to issues in our society, such as, obstacles to women empowerment, racial equality, and de-radicalization. One of the kind of more recent projects that we've launched within our community is the Talking Bubble project. And it's an over-the-phone befriending project aimed at tackling loneliness. So this is just kind of us in a very, very brief nutshell. But when we talk about our Iftars at the Dialogue Society, it's kind of one of our larger flagship projects, and it's something that we've been doing now on a community base for over 20 years. Open to all beliefs and lifestyles, these Iftars have been an opportunity to increase awareness of not only the commonality between our different communities in society, but also an appreciation of our differences in society. Although we're not a religious organization, we are inspired by the Islamic teaching that a sincere dialogue and appreciation and engagement with our diverse communities is foundational to solving social issues and therefore enhancing our social cohesion. For many Muslims and several of our volunteers, Ramadan, becomes a special month for this. It's a kind of a month of some heightened responsibility. And we call this, and we've kind of coined it amongst ourselves as Ramadanification. And I'm not sure if any of our viewers were able to see, the first edition of our Ramadan journal, but we touched upon this concept there. But what do we mean by Ramadanification? We kind of mean the embodiment of the values of Ramadan. So throughout Ramadan, Muslims, go through a deeply personal encounter by fasting, and they seek a raised level of consciousness and closeness to God. That closeness to God, we believe, is also illustrated by a closeness to fellow neighbors and communities, regardless of faith or whether if they hold any at all. As Muslims are reminded in their holy book that diversity is intended so that we strive with one another for the betterment of our society as a whole. So as Muslims shaped by Ramadan, to be Ramadanified, we hope to kind of foster a period of reflection and reunification around common themes and issues that we may have in our society during this period. Ramadan then evolves from not only being the name of a lunar month, but also a virtue. The more Ramadanified Muslims are, the more solidarity we believe they will have with their communities. And we've kind of tied this virtue into the theme of this year, Rekindling the Community Spirit. We all live our busy lives one way or another, and this past year has kind of illustrated the united struggles that we had against the coronavirus and ills within society, which did not recognize religion, race, or lifestyle. It shook us all. We saw bravery, we saw solidarity, and we saw altruism within our diverse societies from all corners of our societies. And we saw that in many ways, from people, simply checking in with their perhaps more vulnerable neighbors to, hundreds of thousands of us who signed up to volunteer for the NHS. We saw the greatness in our community spirit. And we hope this year and this Ramadan event will be an opportunity to contemplate on this further and to look onto ways and how we can develop this and carry it into a hopefully post-COVID world. Perhaps, rekindling our community spirit with lessons learned from the past, year and a bit. So at the heart of our society is compassion for one another. And we hope to kind of develop this through creative strategies to build and maintain solidarity. We believe very simply that, it's kind of in the title of the organization, dialogue is the way forward for making meaningful community relations. So I'd like to thank everyone who's here with us today. And without taking much of anyone's time, I'd like to pass our microphone to our first speaker, Lloyd Russell-Moyle, who we actually wanted to thank especially for meeting us in person just over a year ago now, to kind of organize this event and put a lot of effort into making at the time doing it in person in Parliament. But unfortunately, due to the coronavirus situation, we weren't able to do that last year. He's been a support to get it through and do it kind of live this year. But fingers crossed, next year we'll be in Parliament. So Lloyd, the floor is yours. Lloyd, I think you're muted.
I've just got a problem with the connection. I'll be with you in a second. Go to the next person.
Okay, perfect. No worries. So our next speaker on the list will be Tulip Siddique, MP for Hampstead and Kilburn, Shadow Minister for Children and Early Years.
Good evening, everyone. And Lloyd, thanks for landing me in it. It's a very good excuse. I'll use that next time. I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you very much for inviting me. I wanted to stop and speak at this event because I'm proud to represent a constituency of Hampstead and Kilburn that has 7 synagogues, 4 mosques, and over 35 churches and 2 temples. So you can imagine that the interfaith work in my constituency happens a lot. And I love my constituency because we all work together. And that became more prominent than ever, where the Jewish community, JW3, hosted a huge food bank and opened it up to everyone in the community and fed everyone who was struggling during the pandemic. The mosque down the road from me did the same thing, where they opened the food bank and it was open to everyone in the community and people stopped by. And the church as well, which is again nearest to my house, ran a fabulous food bank, which actually got nominated and recognised by the UK Parliament Awards recently, because they did such a good job in not just supplying essentials and food, but also supplying books to people who couldn't afford to buy books during the pandemic and wanted to do some reading. So I'm very proud of the multicultural, multi-ethnic, multiracial constituency that I represent, but I also want to make sure that I play my part in making sure that communities and societies get on, and that we know each other, that we recognize our differences, and that we celebrate them. I have a Muslim mother. I grew up in the heart of the Jewish community. I'm married to someone called Christian, so I'm really living all the religions and communities that you can expect. But the main thing I want to talk about today is the fact that during the pandemic, it was very obvious that coronavirus affected the BME community and the Muslim community more than most. If you're someone of Bangladeshi origin, you're twice as likely to die than someone who is white. So that's one of the things I wanted to highlight, that we have a job to do in tackling inequalities in the health system, especially when it affects our BME communities and affects the Muslim community quite so dramatically. It's possible that health inequalities weren't highlighted in the manner that they've been highlighted in this pandemic. And that's why I want to be here to express the fact that we want to thank all the BME doctors and nurses, many of whom lost their lives by working on the front line. And the other thing I want to say is that I'm volunteering at a vaccine centre at the moment in my constituency, and I'm afraid that the number of people I see walking in doesn't reflect the community in Camden. A lot of the BME communities haven't walked through the door for the vaccine. I've done a video, I've put it on Twitter, trying to dispel some of the myths around why BME communities don't want to take the vaccine. But I sincerely hope anyone who's listening will help me get the word out about how important the vaccine is and how important it is to take it if we want to protect ourselves, but also protect the communities around us. Being from a BME community myself, I know that we live in intergenerational households. So taking the vaccine will not only protect you, it will also protect your grandparents and elder relatives as well. So I guess what I would like to say, though, is that it can't just be BME people who talk about the importance of taking the vaccine for BME communities. It can't just be people of color who talk about the health inequalities in the system. It's got to be all of us. And if we want to live in a country that is equal for everyone, that does protect the most vulnerable, then I hope that we can create friendship amongst communities, help each other, and make sure that if something like this pandemic happens in the future, that it doesn't so disproportionately impact BME communities and the Muslim community. That's it from me. I tried to pack it as much as I can, and I'll hand over to Lloyd, who'll probably echo some of my sentiments as well.
Yeah, thank you for your passionate contributions on diversity, and then linking that to public health. I'm sure our viewers will go out and find that video and retweet it. Lloyd, have you been able to solve the technical? Perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting these events. We've been doing them for a number of years, cross-party in Brighton and other places, and I think it's really important that we bring them to Parliament. Hopefully, we will do it in person soon. The community is so important, and I think one of the things that I'm reminded of in the last few months, if not now a year, is that often we find what's different in our communities. We like to have arguments about our political beliefs, our religious disagreements, our cultural disagreements, our views of the world, or even how we want our communities to be run. And far too often on things like Twitter and social media, we end up focusing on that difference too much. But one of the things that I think that bonds communities together is that fundamentally, we often want the same things. We want good things for our family, for our neighbours. We want our community to prosper and to be healthy and to be successful. And of course, coronavirus has brought that into sharp focus. It has brought that into sharp focus because we have all had to support each other. We have had to reach out to churches, mosques, synagogues, and other religious and non-religious places and get everyone working together, whether it's the vaccine rollout or whether it's mutual aid. when this crisis started, I remember saying a year ago that we should consider, of course, how communities now work together in the long term. This should be a revival of community engagement. And in many respects, it has. We've seen mutual aid groups supporting people who need food bank access but can't leave their homes. We've seen people supporting people who need lifts to the vaccine centres. In many places, taxi drivers offering it free or at low price because they have community spirit. And of course, we've seen that not just in the community, we see it in business as well, where businesses are wanting to play a greater role in the community. We've seen it with the development of the AstraZeneca vaccine done at cost, where no profit is made whatsoever, because it's all done for the community, the wider community. We've seen the story, of course, how Turkish immigrants in Berlin developed the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. After years and years of studying and research, they were able to put that final piece together to get an effective vaccine. And so we've seen that not only in our small communities, but actually in our global community. And one of the things I think that's important with Ramadan is for us to think about how people come together. And iftars allow that within our family, within our community, but they're also a moment for us to think about how we connect in to that bigger picture. And I know I will consider and try and refocus my efforts on bringing communities together. Because if we don't, and if we just let the noise from social media or the noise from people who want to divide us win, if we allow that to be the predominant sound, then communities crumble. Because communities are strong, but they are only as strong as the people that make them up. And we've seen, of course, and I remember working in Kosovo just after the war, we saw how quickly communities can disintegrate and how difficult it is to build those communities up again. And so it's vital that we all work to make sure we maintain those strong community links. And I know that many places, particularly the religious communities in my constituency and all over Britain, have been at the heart of that, and so have non-religious community centres, and we all need to make sure we continue to work together. Look, I wish you a very good evening, and hopefully when the sun sets, a very good iftar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lloyd, for reminding us that, despite our differences, we all want the same thing for our communities, and that is, to come together and prosper together. Thank you very much. Now we're on to our next speaker, Anneliese Dodds, MP for Oxford East and Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And how could I add to what's already been said by Tulip and by Lloyd? I really strongly agree with all of it. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all, albeit remotely, as we all have to meet nowadays. And we're all looking forward to that time when we can come together in person. And I suppose just one thing I wanted to add to what's already been said, which I strongly agreed with, is really to reflect on how so often many of us would be celebrating different religious festivals. And I'm speaking to you from Oxford, and here in this city, we see at the time of Ramadan and Eid in particular, that there's very strong commitment to having cross-cultural dialogue and involvement there, that, I always see the faith leaders from different groups present at different Eid events, find the same time when it comes to the major Jewish festivals, the major Hindu festivals, major Christian festivals as well, that there always is that involvement and engagement. And in fact, we undertake in Oxford an annual interfaith walk where everybody's brought together, and those of no faith, so that we together can learn much more about each other. We've been prevented from being in the same place, of course, because of the COVID situation. We're all looking forward to getting back to that. But in the interim, I think we've got to work even harder to build those links and those bridges. And I do think this is a time when, while we've seen the value of community and of working together, as both Lloyd and Tulip have quite rightly set out, we've also seen the dangers of division as well, the dangers of misinformation, of rumours circulating, of prejudice, unfortunately. So we really must work very, very hard to underline how together we can achieve so much more. And often at this time, I would be reflecting on what a colleague in Parliament of all of ours, Jo Cox, said, and her family have since really worked very hard with others to continue her commitment to community cohesion. And she was very clear that what unites us is so much more important than what divides us, and that's what we've got to focus on into the future. So really good to be with you all, but let's make sure that we build on this, that we're not just having these conversations, I would say also at times of celebration, but that we're having conversations around some of the harder issues, potentially situations where there may be constrained resources, situations where there are inequalities, just as Tulip said, in health outcomes, for example, in housing and other areas, where we really need to be uncovering those inequalities and dealing with them together in a way that underlines broadly our common humanity. So big thanks to everyone involved in this. I love that phrase of Ramadanification. There we go. I managed to say that word. I think that's a wonderful idea about the spirit of sharing, togetherness, generosity that is shown during this period, and of spirituality as well. And looking forward to hearing some of the music as well that I believe is coming up. And thank you for having us again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Anneliese, for emphasizing unity in the face of division and perhaps some of the tougher issues facing our society. Thank you very much for being here. Now we're on to Professor Paul Weller from the Universities of Coventry and Derby and Regent's Park College, University of Oxford.
Hi, and thanks very much for inviting me. I'm neither a parliamentarian and I'm not sure I'm a community leader, so I feel a little bit of an imposter, but I am a friend of the Dialogue Society and the excellent work that it does both nationally and in a number of local areas throughout the country. So thank you for inviting me. Perhaps somewhat typically for an academic, I'm going to begin by posing a little bit of a question to the remit that we were given tonight. The remit we were given tonight was to talk around the theme, Rekindling the Community Spirit, in order to revive feelings of support, love and trust that we may have thought we've lost during the pandemic. And I want to stand that on its head just a little bit, while I understand what that's saying, rather to say, perhaps it's the case that during this pandemic time, rather we've been engaged in creating and or building upon a community spirit that maybe we've found and or rediscovered in the way that we've engaged with the pandemic. It's oftentimes in life, I think, our experience, both personally and in groups, that sometimes when we share the facing of adversity or challenges, it's precisely through that sharing in facing adversity or challenge that we then bring to birth something new in our understanding or our action, or we remember something that had been perhaps previously lost or overlaid by other things. And indeed, I think that's actually part of what Ramadan fasting does. It's a denial of oneself. It's a self-chosen thing, unlike COVID, which nobody has chosen and has come upon us. But in Ramadan, one chooses to deny oneself certain things. And then at a very basic level, at the end of the day, one enjoys things together in a new way and appreciates what one has foregone during the day in terms of food and drink. So standing this on its head a little bit, I think that in this time we can say we have actually maybe discovered and created and built upon things in new ways. So for example, I know it's become rather cliched, but the clapping around the NHS that happened in the early stages of the pandemic, what a wonderful thing that was in bringing to mind, bringing to consciousness and awareness what a wonderful service that is for us as a society. My wife is a German, and today she became also a British citizen. She didn't understand the history of the NHS, but after seeing that, she started watching the programme called The Midwife and understood the history out of which this came and why it's so important to us. Other things that have happened in the pandemic, people like me are generally, normally very mobile, but actually, albeit over the garden fence or occasionally across each other from the doorstep, I perhaps had rather more to do with my physical neighbours than normally I have done in the past when whizzing around the country and whizzing around the world for all sorts of things. Life has slowed down, and in that slowing down, it's been possible to discover things that have perhaps been lost or overlaid, to rediscover them and build upon them anew. Lloyd mentioned briefly technology. Yes, social media can be a terribly destructive thing. Bombing out people, attacking people, undermining people. But have we also not discovered during the pandemic, and indeed we're doing it now, that through the internet, there are wonderful things that can be achieved. People brought together at a time we can't travel. We can have not only contacts with people in different parts of our own country, but also engage with people internationally. This is a new rediscovery of community. And in this time, a number of faith groups and traditions, which sometimes have never visited each other's own places of worship or community centres, at least some have come together, and the Dialogue Society has been instrumental in facilitating that in the electronic realm. And at last then started just for the first time maybe to put a foot forward in getting to know other people, and maybe even in sharing in some things like prayers and reflection and meditation together in a way that they might not have done in one building at one place at one time, but have dared to do that through the electronic medium of the internet. So there are many things, I think, not so much rediscovering what we've lost, but some things also that we have actually discovered, new or renewed in this time. And dialogue is at the heart of that, I think, too. One of my universities is, of course, the University of Oxford. Lloyd's already mentioned it, but I can't let the time pass without saying dialogue has been a part of the scientific process of discovery around how to engage with and develop things like the vaccines. It doesn't just come out of the air. It doesn't come from one person's thought. It comes from a team working together, sharing thoughts with each other. In the case of the Oxford AstraZeneca team, an international team of people brought from all around the world into Oxford and working on this together. And as Lloyd says, also producing something on a not-for-profit basis. So there is good news to be had, not that we choose to go into a pandemic to discover or rediscover these things. Absolutely not. Too many people have suffered. Too many people have died. But through it, there are positive things that we can learn and build on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I'm sure that was our intention, to have the whole topic turned on its head, to kind of rediscover the concept of community spirit in Ramadan. But you know, I'd echo everything that you've said. It's a very well contribution. Thank you very much. Now we're on to our marbling arts display by Afra Nur Doludizgin. Afra, are you? I think you are here. Yep. Your camera is off at the moment, just to... I know Afra was just here a moment ago. Okay, I'll just move on to the next speaker for now, and then hopefully Afra will be back in time to kind of continue, and we can wiggle the speaking order around a bit. So now we're on to Maria Miller, the MP for Basingstoke.
thank you so much. It's really fantastic to be able to be here to share this Iftar event this evening. And it is, as we've just heard, one of the good things that has come out of the last 12 months, that events like this have become a normal part of everyday life, sitting down and talking with people from around the country in a way which perhaps we didn't do before. And I'm talking to you this evening from my bit of North Hampshire, Basingstoke, and I know Tulip will have been talking to you from London, and Russell from Brighton, and there'll be people listening throughout to join together throughout the country to celebrate this event. Now, in my bit of Basingstoke, I'm afraid I only have one mosque and one Hindu temple, and but I do have about more than 40 churches. So religious life is vibrant throughout our country, and its diversity. And I think that has come to the fore over the last 12 months, and the important role that religious institutions have played in the response to this pandemic. But let's be really clear, the past 12 months have been a fundamental challenge. And as we start to think about the theme of this evening, rekindling our communities, I think we also have to acknowledge the challenges that we've gone through to be able to do that. So many families who've suffered loss and have had not the time to grieve in the way that they may normally do, or indeed the ability to be able to grieve in the way that they might normally do within their community. There are many thousands of people who've lost their livelihoods, and public services that have been under incredible pressure. And all of this despite significant support being made available throughout our country. And what I think has been particularly unique about this challenge is that it's not just affected us here at home, it's affected everybody across the globe. And for those of us who have families scattered across many countries, then it's something that has challenged us all, and in many ways we've been able to share that experience together. I know my own family is split between the United Kingdom and Canada, and talking to each other about something about a shared common experiences of this nature is quite unique and very unusual. And no aspect of our lives has been untouched, and there have been profound effects. And people, I think, have been forced to revisit their own priorities. And I think, again, this is very significant for the theme of this evening, because I think people have been forced to consider a much simpler way of life, being forced to consider the fragility of life, and being forced to change the way not only they work, but they live as well. And I think there's a great deal to be said for the fact that we're not actually the same people that we were this time last year. And I think we have to think about that before we can fully understand how we might rekindle the community spirit wherever we live in our country, or indeed across the world. Because firstly, we have to think about the fact we have in many ways become more connected through things like technology, through a better understanding about volunteering and how individuals can contribute on a regular basis to their community in a way which they may not have had the time to do before. The importance of good neighbours, relying on somebody to be able to perhaps go out shopping for you if you've been isolating as a result of the pandemic. And what I found in my own community in Basingstoke, actually, in many ways, people have told me that they felt more connected. They felt that they've had permission to speak to their neighbours in a way which they may not have done for years before. So I think we have to understand that, and we have to understand the positive things that have come out of the last 12 months, as well as those challenges, so that we can use this opportunity wisely. And as Tulip said right at the beginning, and she's absolutely right, is that the vaccine plays such an important part of how we move forward and reconnect as a community. We've now got more than 90% of over 50s vaccinated throughout the United Kingdom, and making sure that absolutely everybody who can be vaccinated will make our country not just safer but more resilient as we move forward. So I think all of us at this moment in time need to be thinking what we can be doing to help our communities reconnect in this new world in which we live, whether it is through volunteering, whether it is through the technology that helps us join together, whether it is helping children who are going back into schools after having been absent from them for many months, that they're able to settle back down into a routine. And supporting our community's mental health through the sorts of projects which I know are working well in my own community, encouraging people to be outdoors, taking exercise and reconnecting in that way. As human beings, we thrive in communities, and over the past 12 months our spirits have struggled with the social isolation of a pandemic, but it has also helped us, as I've said, identify what's important. It's also helped us identify how resilience is important. So as our communities open up, and let's take this opportunity to keep what is good that we've learned over the last 12 months, refocus our efforts on all our responsibilities to help make sure that our communities thrive, and that we all do everything we can to bring people together after what has been a difficult time and allow them to thrive into the future. And I wish everybody the very best wishes this evening, and a wonderful iftar as the evening unfolds.
Thank you very much for touching upon several themes within the concept of rekindling our community spirit, both challenges in local communities and also on a global scale, and kind of reminding us to revisit our own priorities perhaps, and take what was as we've learned in a beneficial way from the pandemic, and help and support our communities in ways as we move forward. So thank you very much. I think Afra is now ready for her marbling arts contribution, and just a few words on the talent of Afra. The kind of work of marbling arts has been developed, I think, for over 1,000 years now. And it's a very kind of globalized art that you can see in the history of both Europe, the Middle East, and far Asia. So Afra, it's all yours now. Thank you very much. Yay, thank you very much, Afra. I'm always mesmerized by the artwork every time I see it, and you've had the same impact on me again this time around. So thank you very much. We're now on to our next speaker, Rabbi Charlie Burginski, from the Chief Executive Officer of Liberal Judaism.
Thank you so much for having me here this evening. Every weekend at the end of the Jewish festival of Shabbat, Jews take part in a ritual called Havdalah. It separates Shabbat and the rest of the week. We light a candle, taste sweet wine, and smell spices, a sort of attempt to take the peace of Shabbat into the rest of the week with us, to hold on to that holy moment as we re-enter the busy work week. I don't need to tell anybody here that the pandemic has brought overwhelming grief to so many, that loss has taken so many different forms, the loss of life, the loss of identity, of company, the loss of work and livelihood. And I know too that I'm not alone in recognising that while many of us are really excited by the prospect of lockdown ending and the thought of spending time in person together again, it comes with fears. The personal fears of whether we can remember how to interact with each other in person. I know I'm fearful about whether I'll deal with the commute, whether we might shrink at another's touch. And also they're the communal fears, whether after being able to attend services in our pyjamas or while mowing the lawn, that anyone will actually show up in person. As well as the very real fears that the disparities and divisions in society, as those before me so eloquently have articulated, and how they've grown during this time. and the fear that the challenge to rebuild and connect, to heal, to regrow will be too large to overcome. But as I thought about tonight and the wonderful title of the event, Rekindling the Community Spirit, that image that I spoke of at the beginning of the Havdalah ceremony struck me. Within the terrible loss that has occurred during this pandemic, there have been huge lights kindled. And we've come together, as we have also heard of tonight, time and time again, as people of faith and people of none. And as we come into this new period of time, I'm not sure it's so much about rekindling the community spirit as much as it's about keeping that fire burning and adding kindling to it. Because we have reinvented what it means to connect with each other. And so many have committed to bringing people together and ensuring that even when so many community buildings closed, the communities themselves did not. We've also learned that we can change. And I think we've all witnessed so many people being included in ways that before they were not. And communities tirelessly reaching out to their neighbours and breaking down walls with new ways to communicate and interact. And so even in this difficult liminal time, I find that I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that if we hold on to those moments of light and connection, we will be able to overcome our fears and challenges together. Rabbi Leo Beck was a 20th century German rabbi, and he once said Judaism was a religion of ethical optimism. And this was from a German Jew who, despite offers of freedom, chose to stay with his community in Theresienstadt concentration camp. And he said, we cannot control what the world does to us, but we have complete control over how we respond to it. And when there is darkness, we find our strength and purpose in being together like we are tonight and like we have been in so many different ways over this period. And anybody who knows me knows that I often turn back to the singer Leonard Cohen, who 5 days short of his 80th birthday was asked about his decision to start playing Hallelujah again. In 2009, he said that too many people sung it and so he had stopped singing it. But now, he said, given the state of the world, he felt the urge to sing the world itself. So even concluding one of his performances of the song, he recited in Hebrew the priestly blessing that says, Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yeh Adonai panav elecha v'hineka, Yiseh Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bless us and keep us. May God look kindly upon us and be gracious to us. May God reach out to us in tenderness and give us peace. Cohen takes a religious and humanistic approach to the predicaments of the present, prophetically singing about the world's troubles, but even he finds optimism in imperfection, urging us on to perseverance and faith despite the brokenness of everything around us. And in that same song, he sings, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering, there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. And so tonight, I want to wish all Muslims marking this holy month of Ramadan, Ramadan Kareem, may all the blessings of this holy month come to you. And together, all of us together, may we see how much light we can continue to bring to the connections between our own communities and beyond.
Thank you very much, Rabbi, for your message of unity. I was touched by it, and thank you for introducing us to the Jewish festival of Havdalah, taking the Shabbat into the rest of the week. Hopefully we can take our blessings, despite all the pain and difficulties we've experienced during this period, into the rest of our lives that we live. So thank you very much. We're now on to our next speaker, Canon Pat Brown, the Roman Catholic duty priest to Parliament.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be with you. Apart from being the priest at Parliament, I'm also parish priest in Pimlico, right in central London, in the heart of London. And it's here in Pimlico I live that's my full-time job, as it were. In our local community here, the Muslim community doesn't have a dedicated house of prayer or mosque, so they have to look for various spaces to pray in. During Ramadan, they use our parish hall, which is just outside my window here, for their night prayer, which I believe is called Taraweeh. And they come every night just around 10 o'clock or just after it to pray there. And this connection has brought many blessings to me and our community, because we find we're getting to know each other much better. You know, our holy books all say love your neighbor, but unless you know your neighbor, it's very easy to love somebody you don't see, don't have to live with, cheek by jowl. And is it love? You know, it can be by charitable deeds or money sent away to people we don't know. But the real task is to love the people we live with and around in our community. So during this time and over the last few years since we've been doing this, the Imam has invited me to his house for a meal. A local Muslim leader has invited me to his restaurant when my family are visiting, for all of us to go and share a meal there. I've been coming out of this very well, actually. But so too, I think, has the Muslim community. Now I find myself walking down the street and people of the Muslim community stopping me just to say thank you for giving us the space to pray. And my response to that is always, well, I wish everybody, from whatever their faith or background, I wish everybody would pray. And anything I can do to facilitate that in whatever way people want to pray, I would want to do it. So I suppose listening to the speakers tonight, what are we saying? I think there's a real challenge to all of us now to not just love our neighbor. I think it's a Peanuts cartoon says, I love humanity. It's individual people I can't stand. You know, we've got in our local communities, it's the individual people we need to get to know. And so the Sikh neighbor, the Hindu co-worker, the Muslim business associate, the Buddhist member of the PTA, the Christian mother-in-law that I might have, whoever it is, or the person who doesn't believe, have any religious faith, the challenge is to have a drink with them, have a cup of tea with them, and get to know them, ask them about their interests, their traditions. If they were born somewhere else, how did they end up here in London? Why do we all stay here in London? What do we love about life? What do we find difficult? Enter into their world and allow them enter into our world too. And I love the phrase I want to finish with. And if they reciprocate and they're open to all of that dialogue and conversation, then invite them to join the great conspiracy that we're all a part of, the plotting together for the common good. I wish you all a very happy Iftar tonight and Feast of Ramadan.
Thank you very much. I mean, Ed, I was touched by you know, your lived experience of dialogue within your own community, and it kind of took me back in my knowledge of Islamic history to when the Prophet would allow Christian travelers to spend, you know, the whole day, you know, taking and being able to do their own prayers in the mosque. So it's a lovely example of dialogue and how, you know, that concept is still relevant in a different context, in a different situation, and the roles are reversed, but it's still that effort to get to know one another that brings us together. So thank you very much. Now we're on to two short music performances. The first is by Tugay Yalchin, who will be performing the ney for us, which is a very kind of prominent Middle Eastern wind instrument, and it's very soothing. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.
And good evening, all distinguished guests. Thank you so much, Dialogue Society and Aisha, for this great program. And I would like to perform, you told its name is ney, and one of the Anatolian traditional instruments. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Guy for kind of introducing us to a universal language of music. We have a second performance, which is a very, very special guest from another corner of the UK, from Cardiff. We have Salma, who is our youngest guest. Salma, are you ready?
Yes.
Thank you. You can go when you're ready.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Salma, and today I'm going to play Prelude by J.S. Bach. Hope you enjoy.
We thank you, Salma. Thank you for the mesmerizing performance and contributing to our event today with such a difficult instrument. So thank you very much. And now, just as we come close to the end of our program, we're going on to our next speaker, the Reverend Dr. Richard Sudworth, the Secretary for Interreligious Affairs to the Archbishop of Canterbury and National Interreligious Affairs Advisor for the Church of England.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Aisha, for your lovely warm welcome. Salma, that was fantastic. Really brilliant. What a rich evening this has been. Artistic contributions, music contributions, political wisdom, religious wisdom, and even some Leonard Cohen quotes. You can't get better than that. It's great to be with you. I'm not sure I can add much to the wisdom that's been shared, but just to say a couple of things. First of all, this has been a really tough year, hasn't it? That's been acknowledged already. It's been a tough year for everyone, and it's been a devastating year for some. And it will probably continue to be devastating for many, even as we hope to do, we come out of the worst of the pandemic. A word that's been bandied around for the pandemic has been this is apocalyptic. And in its proper meaning, an apocalypse actually isn't the end of the world. It's a revealing. And with this kind of prompt to speak around the rekindling of community spirit, I wonder whether there have been a number of reveals over the past year. Some really tough reveals of the reality of health inequalities, the realities of economic inequalities for many that financially are in desperate straits, reveals of our neglect of social care. All of us are a part of this and this system. But underneath so many of the reveals, I think the big one that we can't afford to ignore is the reveal of how interdependent we are. We often pretend, particularly in our Western society, that, you know, as individuals, we can look after ourselves, we can sort stuff out, we're autonomous, we're independent. But actually, we all depend on each other, whether it's the shop workers that have kept us fed in the toughest of the lockdown periods, the nurses and doctors who have kept our relatives alive and healthy, or those that have been by their bedside when they've died and we've not been able to be there. The cleaners in our hospitals, the dustbin men, those that drive our buses and trains to keep a semblance of stuff going so that we are fed and keep warm. We need each other. And there are some things that when they hit, kind of bring to light and highlight that we have to work together. Aisha, in her brilliant intro, talked about the importance of dialogue, because this is hosted by the Dialogue Society, of course. But there's a fundamental truth here that actually we need each other, all faiths and none, when it comes to a global pandemic. And you can add into here and go away and have a think about what else you might add. Our global climate crisis. You can add into that just how we financially and economically build up from this moment so that people aren't left behind. We need each other. And a bit like Professor Weller, I'd like to be a bit provocative and kind of turn the title on its head, because I think many of our religious communities have long had brilliant community spirit. That's been another reveal, that faith communities have all along been serving food banks and listening to people who are in mental health crisis, visiting, ensuring that shopping is done for the elderly, a myriad of things that they are doing, and many have stepped up to the plate. And it's been great to see at local and national levels greater collaboration across faith communities and with local and national governments, because people of religious faith don't just kind of turn up on their Friday or Saturday or Sunday. It's this whole life stuff, and how all of us can collaborate for the common good, for me, is the big lesson that we can't afford to miss from this time. I know one of the hardships, and it's a small hardship compared to those that so many have suffered, but our festivals and the mutual hospitality that we enjoy with each other's festivals is a biggie. I know for a fact, and I live in inner city Birmingham, a mixed faith, mixed cultural area. I'm missing the hospitality of a proper iftar, sat down on the floor of a mosque with Muslim friends, eating a really good curry. And I know my Muslim friends are missing the human contact of a big community and loads of family around that ordinarily would happen at iftar. All our communities have suffered similar such deprivations, but many of us have stepped up to work across boundaries, to do what we can with creativity. And I've loved that tonight's been creative as well, to acknowledge that kindling of community spirit in the arts that I know I miss, live music and paintings. And we all need that. We're all dependent on each other. So I'll finish there and wish all of you who are celebrating Ramadan Kareem, may you be blessed over this period, and thank you for the privilege of sharing with you tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Reverend, for summarizing the touching year that it's been for all of us through several reveals, and how each and every member of society is critical in that community spirit and in unity against all our difficulties. So thank you very much. We're on to our next speaker, who wasn't able to be here with us today, but he sent in a video. It's from David Lammy, MP for Tottenham and Shadow Justice Secretary. So we'll be watching his now.
I'm David Lammy, the Member of Parliament for Tottenham and the Shadow Justice Secretary. Ramadan is an important time to centre ourselves, to think about who we are and where we've been over the last year. And there is no doubt about it that this is a year of tremendous hardship across Muslim communities in our own country and across the world. There will be many, many Muslims who are experiencing grief. And there will be many beyond the Muslim community who are experiencing grief and loss as a result of the pandemic. There's also financial hardship as people lose their jobs. Ramadan reminds us about simple things like coming together as a community to feed one another. And my God, as we've seen queues for food banks and families struggling with feeding themselves, how important Ramadan is. So Ramadan Mubarak, let us rediscover community spirit. Let us look to the future with hope, and inshallah, we will prevail. Ramadan Mubarak.
Well, he's not here in person, but I'd like to extend my thanks to David for contributing, despite his busy schedule with a pre-recording. And now we're on to our next speaker, Amrik Singh Ubdi, the director of the Nishkan Center.
How you follow all those speakers, absolutely amazing. Respected and distinguished brothers and sisters, a very good evening to you all, and allow me to greet you with the Sikh greeting. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. The Khalsa belongs to the Almighty. Therefore, all victory belongs to the Almighty. We're here today as global citizens looking at rekindling the spirit, the community spirit, as our Muslim brothers and sisters open their Iftar today in the month of Ramzan. Assalamu alaikum to them and Ramzan Mubarak. We have seen many faith festivals and landmarks over the last month, and we will see more in the coming months. Easter, Vaisakhi, Passover, Good Friday, Chaitra Navratri, Gudi Padwa, just to mention a few, and many others, but we've had to mark them in very different ways. Before we rekindle the community spirit, let us consider rekindling the individual spirit. What are we here to do? What is our rationale for being here on Mother Earth? By the way, today is International Mother Earth Day, so it might be a good idea to seize the moment and have a period of reflection before we turn in tonight. My Sikh faith tells me, Man tu jot saroop hai, apna mool pechan. Oh, my mind, you are the embodiment of the divine light. Recognize your own origin. That said, as lights from the same divine spark, if we can't see God in all, we can't actually see God at all. Our festivities and Ramadan is no different. Encourage us to reach out, to think of the other and be there for the other. COVID has exposed and put a spotlight on the most vulnerable in our society. And it has shown the huge inequalities in society: poverty, isolation, loneliness, mental health, and well-being, to mention just a few. But we've also seen the greatness of humanity. The community spirit was very, very moving. Communities coming together, places of worship, and people from all walks of life came together to help one another. A phenomenal stepping up to help fellow human beings. But we must continue this effort post-COVID. Let us work and fight for the well-being, welfare, happiness, peace, goodwill, and involvement, participation, and the best opportunities for one and all. In our journey to return to normality, let it be a better place for those who were previously excluded, marginalized, and vulnerable. Let us lose the culture of them and thine, or you and yours. Let us move to an inclusive culture of us and ours. We're informed, na koi bairi, nahi bigana. There is no alien, there is no enemy. As a diverse and united collection of people, we must hold ourselves, hold each other, and those in authority, those making decisions on our behalf, to account. Let our diversity empower us and give us strength to our combined efforts to drive forward for a better world. Like our Muslim family sharing with us this evening, let us all open our doors and our hearts to each other and come together to make society fairer and more inclusive. When we unite, our solidarity will be unique opportunities for us to showcase and celebrate tolerance, diversity, community spirit and generosity, and power to influence change. By helping each other, we can make a difference to so many lives. Post-COVID, we cannot be about me and I, but about we and us. We must unite and work together to make a difference to the well-being of all. Let's create a fairer, more equal, more compassionate, more welcoming, and a better place to live. We must together create the right narrative and the right future with optimism. Before I finish, I'd just like to pick up a point Professor Weller made about dialogue. Dialogue implies two people speaking. My chairman talks about trialogue because God is omnipresent and always in the conversation, which is why the dialogue leads to something so beautiful. May the Almighty's blessings and grace be with you all. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much, Amrik, for your lovely and lively contribution, linking unity, planet, humanity, faith, all in one, and sharing it in person. You mentioned that your Muslim neighbors were sharing today, but hopefully next year it will be in person, and we'll get to express these feelings and emotions further. We're on to our penultimate speaker now, Dr. Disha Chadha from the Face Forum of London and Hindu Forum of Britain.
Thank you very much, Aisha. I think everything has already been said, so there really is nothing that I can add. And I also believe that the hour is very, very near for you to break your fast. So I would just like to add my warmest thanks for the invitation. Ramadan Kareem to all my Muslim friends and brothers and sisters, and just to echo the thoughts of everyone who has spoken before me. We know that community has changed so much in definition and our understanding of it, and that the pandemic has shown us that. But it has built, to my mind, a stronger sense of community. And I think we know now, more than we have ever known before, that in order to move forward, we must embrace this sense of community and support and help and guide and love one another. And speaking as a Hindu, I know full well from my own personal experience that Muslim philosophy and Muslim teaching just embodies this sense of what it is to truly love thy neighbor, what community spirit is always been about. And I thank my Muslim friends for setting such a wonderful example to all of us. So, thank you once again for allowing us to be part of your journey and for allowing us to share this festival with you. And Ramadan Kareem once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Disha, for accepting our invitation and being here with us, and sharing your thoughts on the spirit of community through love and faith as well. We're on to our last speaker of the evening, Imam Qari Asim, the chair of the Mosque and Imams National Advisory Board, for reflections of the evening. You're muted, Imam. Rushing off.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm really sorry about this. I think there has been some miscommunication. So I was very attentively listening to all the contributors and the participants, and I'm now rushing to the mosque to break the fast and pray with the congregation. But first of all, I really want to thank the Dialogue Society for organizing this webinar, and it's been extremely illuminating for me to listen to different contributions. I think I'm going to continue from what Reverend Dr. Richard Sudworth said, that this is all about us realizing that we are dependent on God as people of faith. I think for me, it's about realizing we're dependent on God, but we're also interdependent. We affect each other. We are so interconnected that our being is only complete with being with others. And this was really highlighted to all of us, perhaps people of faith more than anyone else, really, how communities came together. So as a person of faith, I was truly humbled and inspired to see young Muslims, whilst fasting in the month of Ramadan, queuing up outside supermarkets to buy food for their neighbors who were perhaps self-isolating or needed help with shopping. And that really rekindled the spirit of community for me. And I think it's about sustaining that spirit, which is going to be extremely challenging post-COVID, but with great willpower, as well as the spirit that we've seen in terms of whether clapping for the NHS or otherwise. I think we will come to a new realization where we are going back to a degree of normality, but with a sense of renewal, to renew ourselves, as the Quran says, that these pandemics are about rekindling spirit and renewing ourselves rather than going back to the same old routines that we were perhaps used to, with division and also with hatred at times. So thank you so much. I'm sorry for these broken words, but I hope that that we continue with this dialogue.
No, thank you very much, Imam, for contributing despite your last-minute rush to the mosque. I'm sure everyone understands, and we're all grateful that you've been able to contribute and be with us, reminding us of the spirit of Ramadan in line with the theme of rekindling and renewing this evening. I'd just like to end by kind of bringing all the thoughts and messages together from this evening. And firstly, to thank all our speakers for their valuable contributions, and all those online who have been on us with this journey in the YouTube chat section. This event of dialogue was within another dialogue, cross-party and cross-faith, in bringing our community leaders together to rekindle the community spirit amongst ourselves, and numerous themes and messages were shared, each as valuable as the other. So thank you all for being here and re-embarking on this journey with us all. I thoroughly enjoyed our rekindled spirit here, and hopefully as leaders and representatives of our communities, we can engage in developing dialogue and this community spirit further in our communities. There's a lot of rekindling to contemplate on, but thank you once again for being here, and I hope to see you all at another event. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.